Well, hello everyone. My name is John French and I work at the Abrams Planetarium working on the Sky Calendar that we produce. And I thought I would take some time to talk a little bit about this week's Sky Calendar and what's up in the sky. And so we'll kind of zoom in on the Sky Calendar and talk about some of the different things that are worth seeing. We're going to have a crescent moon in the sky this week. So that will be worth watching. So let's kind of zoom in here on the Sky Calendar and see what is happening. If we take a look at the Sky Calendar this week, starting, I guess, yesterday was the new moon. I'm recording this on April 23rd. And so yesterday was the new moon. Now, if you're a subscriber to our Sky Calendar, you might have noticed that there was a typo. We try to avoid that, but every once in a while they slip through. And instead of typing new moon on there, I put the words full moon. So that's been corrected on this version of it. And the new moon was at 10:26 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And tonight, because it's a day after the new moon, there will be a very thin crescent moon on the horizon, but it'll be quite a challenge to see. You're going to need to have a perfect horizon, and to kind of see how that goes, I'm going to try to simulate that using our software here, Stellarium, and you can see I have this set for about 8:30, and really at 8:30 the sky is just not dark enough yet, and there's still going to be a twilight glow happening. Venus will probably be visible by that time, higher up in the west, but if we kind of back time up, you can see that the sun and the moon are pretty close to each other. Again, if we take the atmosphere off, you can see their positions. They're not that far apart right now. And so when the sun goes down, the sky really doesn't get dark enough. And if we turn our atmosphere on again, you can see as the sun goes down, that moon is just starting to come out, and it'll be very low on the horizon. Now, if you did have a pair of binoculars or a telescope and a perfect view to the horizon, you might be able to see it, but there's so little of it illuminated. There's just a little sliver of it that is catching some sunlight that we're able to see back here on the Earth. So it will be quite a challenging moon to see, so don't be too discouraged if you have a little bit of trouble finding that moon tonight. So that one is going to be a pretty tough one. But one thing that is kind of interesting, Ramadan is marked by the first sighting of the crescent moon, and so this it's one of the things about the Islamic calendar is that it's not based on the time of the new moon when the month starts, but on the first sighting of the crescent moon. And so that's why we often will put that on to our sky calendars. Tomorrow, on Friday, that'll be much easier to see that moon. If we zoom in on our calendar for Friday, then the moon will have moved farther along and be closer to the Pleiades star cluster. So this April 23rd box was set for 25 minutes after sunset, when the sky is really not very dark. But an hour after sunset, the sky should be dark enough that you should easily be able to see that moon, the Pleiades, Aldebaran, and Venus. So let's take a look at Stellarium. And if we jump forward a day, the moon will be farther along. If we look, there's the sun. If we zoom out, you can see the distance and the gap between the sun and the moon has increased quite a bit, and by the time the sky gets dark and the sun gets farther below the horizon, you'll be able to see the moon, the Pleiades, the star Aldebaran in Taurus, the bull, and Venus. And it'll still be a pretty thin crescent. If we zoom in on that crescent moon, you can see there's a little bit more of it being illuminated. So check that out tomorrow, and then Venus, of course, will be really nice. The next day, the moon will have moved along a little bit farther, and it will be right next to the star Aldebaran. And then as the sky gets darker, I think those labels... No, okay. I'm not that familiar with the software, why the labels of the stars don't always show up. But anyway, there you can see, if we zoom in on the moon, you can see that it's quite a bit more illuminated. And this star right here gets pretty close to the moon, so that should be an interesting thing through a pair of binoculars. I don't think there's an occultation from here, but let's see, probably not. An occultation is when the moon passes in front of a star or a planet, and they're always kind of interesting to see. But the Venus will be a little bit higher up, so let's see where we are on the sky calendar then. So that would be this day right here, the Saturday the 25th we're up to. So let's move our sky calendar over to Sunday, starting next week. The moon will be right next to Venus, and it's always really scenic when you have that bright planet Venus and the crescent moon right next to each other. And so if we go back to our stellarium, you can see here's that sky that night, and if we zoom in, you can see more of the crescent moon and Venus next to each other, and the star Betelgeuse to the left, Aldebaran down below with the Pleiades star cluster. And then as the sky gets darker, when they get a little bit lower, even more scenic. So do check that out. We turn off the atmosphere there. Yeah, there we go. So, yeah. All right. So that will be a very scenic night Sunday. Let's hope for a clear sky that night, because that'll be really worth checking out. And now let's jump forward to Monday. What's happening Monday? We have the moon up above Venus, so Venus will be to the lower right of the moon. And watch that star Beta Tauri, which is one of the tips of the horns of Taurus the bull. Venus next month is going to move right past that star very closely, so that should be really interesting to check out. So let's see if we can see that on Stellarium. So there's the star Beta Tauri right there. We click on it. Does it tell us a little bit about it? Elnath is another name for it. It's a double star, 1.65 magnitude. So next month, and as this next week and month go by, notice the distance between Venus and that star, and Venus is going to pass pretty close to that star next month. And the moon is moving closer to Castor and Pollux in Gemini, so that'll be coming up. If we zoom in on the moon, you can see it better for what phase it is. So it's a fairly wide crescent by then. And looks like the next day on our calendar is a morning scene. We always try to pick different scenes that are places where there's kind of interesting things to see, and on that day we can see that Jupiter and Saturn are 5 degrees apart. And so Jupiter and Saturn, of course, are getting closer to each other as they do every 20 years, and in December they're going to pass each other. But there is a little bit of retrograde motion that goes on, so they get close and they kind of get a little bit farther apart and then closer. So I believe that they are kind of separating a little bit right now, and so you're going to see them over the next month or two moving a little bit apart from each other before they start to move back close to each other. But that's a morning scene, and you see Mars is 18 degrees to the lower left of Saturn. So let's switch over to our stellarium, and let's move to the east and watch those planets rise. So it looks like Jupiter and Saturn are rising about 3 o'clock in the morning, and then Mars to their lower left. And if we go until the morning twilight, there'll be some of the last stars that will fade out as the sky starts to brighten. So check that out in the morning. All right, well, let's move around to the next night. So we'll watch the next night as the moon passes by the twin stars in Gemini, Castor and Pollux. So we'll move that sun down, let the sun set, so we're back to another evening. And there's the moon and the constellation of Gemini. These two stars here are the twin stars, Castor and Pollux. And as the sky gets darker, they should show up a little bit better. And if we look at our sky calendar, look at our sky calendar over the next 3 nights, the 28th, the 29th, and the 30th, that moon will move past there, and it goes from a crescent to the first quarter moon. And the first quarter moon is going to happen at 4 in the afternoon on April 30th. So by the evening, it'll be a little bit past a first quarter moon. And so that is what we see there. And looks like, I guess, the 30th is the end of the month. And so let's watch as we jump forward a couple of days there. And then that moon will move on past until it is past the first quarter moon. And so those are some of the things that are visible in our sky right now. So do get out there and try to look at some of those things in the sky. Hopefully we'll have some clear weather and you'll be able to find those things. So signing off, thank you very much, and stay safe out there.